Umlen and Ablak Gemara. Today's daf is daf Pei Dalad, and we are up to the Mishnah on daf Pei Dalad. So we learned generally that the Mizbeach sanctifies whatever comes in contact with the Mizbeach. And even though this particular carbon has been disqualified, it's possible once you placed it on the Mizbeach, you don't bring it down, unless it's totally unsuitable. And we gave an example of something which is totally unsuitable, is a carbon mincha. If your carbon mincha, the process is you put the flour offering into a clay sharis, then the kohen has to come along and do a kmitza and take out a section of it, and then that section he has to put into a clay sharis, and only then does it have a connection to the mizbeach. You got to place it on the mizbeach. So if he bypassed that middle step, he took the kmitza and went straight to the mizbeach, there's no connection between the mizbeach and this particular kmitza. So if you place and it became possible somehow, you took it outside the base of midrash, it became tameh, you put it on, you remove it. Then we had a machlekes, what is exactly suitable is. So we had Rabbi Yeshua says anything which belongs on the fire, but not blood. If the blood became tameh, for example, and you placed the bowl on the mizbeach, you remove it because it has no shaychis, because it says al moigda on the fire. And Rabbi Gamliel says no, mizbeach, even the blood or even libations, if it became possible, they have a connection to the mizbeach, and therefore if you place on the mizbeach, you leave it there. And Rav Shimon comes along and says, well, he says, I agree with blood, it has a shaykhis to the mizbeach because it's mizbeach, moikta ala mizbeach. But when it comes to nesachim, he says it depends. If it's ancillary, if it's secondary to a carbon, connected to a carbon, it has no independent inyan at all, then even if you place it on the mizbeach, it was possible. You place it on the mizbeach, you have to remove it. It became tamei, for example. But if a person was menadev, person donated nesachim on its own, and then it became possible, and you place it on the mizbeach, leave it there. And then in the Gemara, we brought Raisa, we have Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Zagulia, two other opinions. They both say this only applies to karbonas and not to mincha, only to animals. And the machlekes Rabbi Zagulia and Rabbi Kiva is regarding a bird, because one of them learns the word kvasim, so only animals, that if it became possible, you leave it on the mizbech. And the other one says that we learn from the word oila, and the oila could be a bird as well, oila saif, and therefore that also, if it became possible, you place on the mizbech.
So does that mean by nesachim, if someone was menadav nesachim, they both agree, just take it down?
Nesachim is the machlekes of Yeshua and Gamliel. It's part of an animal. Maybe it's nesachim that comes with an animal. No, and according to Rabbi Kiva, it has to be only the animal, the parts of the animal.
Sorry, with that when they said just take it down.
But with nesachim, Rabbi Kiva, Rabbi Zaglili, Rabbi Yeshua, all three of them hold you take it down. According to Rabbi Shimon, it depends on the nesachim are part of a carbon or its own, but not of your own thing. Now the Mishnah continues. Elu, the Mishnah. Elu, the following. Im Olu, they went on the mizbeach. Lo yedu, you don't take them down. How long if you left it overnight into the morning? So now it has a psul, or hayotze, you took it outside of the Beis Hamikdash, or hatame became tamei, or shenishchet chutz lezmana, you shechted and you had a mind outside of the right pigel, or chutz lemekaimai, or chutz lemekaimai, or let's say had a mind chutz lemekaimai. So all of these, all of these, if you place it on, they're all possible. But if you place it on the mizbeach, leave it there ready. And Taisa already wants to know. In other Gemara, it sounds like if you had chutz l'mekayme, you have to remove it. And Taisa wants to make a chiluk between kachim and kachim kalim, as we had in yesterday's Gemara. And that is that kachim already have a shaychus to the mizbeach, because the moment you made it holy, if you use it for yourself, you're a moyo, you're stealing, which means that it already has a property of the mizbeach, property of the so they're mashaying and kachim kalim. It doesn't. You're not moyo until you sprinkle the blood. Before the zrikah dam, you're not moyo at all. Especially according to Gluli, it's called kachim's mom and bail, kachim kalim's mom and bailim, which mom is yours. That was one mizbeach. So therefore, over there, if you had in mind you shchita chutz l'mekayim kachim kalim, you got to take it down because it's no shaychus. Okay, then we continue. Shekiblu tulin, or if a person was disqualified, was Zohar, for example, it was makabel the blood, right? Or the machlezim more later, whether or and v'zarkas damen, he sprayed the blood, or in other cases somebody is possible to spray the blood. All of these, if they're on the mizbech, leave it there. Rabbi Yehuda says, the Gemara will explain, Yehuda says there are three miyutim. Says in the pasuk, Zois Torah Sa'oila, Hi Ha'oila, Zois Torah, it says in the pasuk, Zois Torah Sa'oila, and then the word Zois is a miyut, and then it says, Hi Ha'oila, it's a he is another miyut this, and Ha'oila, the second oila, Ha, is another miyut. The first ha'oila is not a miyut because we need that to teach us something else, which we had many times in the Gemara, that this is the first carbon, the oil is tummy, the first carbon you bring in the morning, you don't bring any carbonas before then. Okay, you have three miyutim. So different miyutim says there are three exceptions to this rule. Why punct these three? We'll see later. Because we're talking about things that happened. The three that he chose are things, are psulim that took place before you sprayed the blood. Once you spray the blood, things become a lot easier. You did the bulk of the carbon. For example, if fats on the mezbech, if you don't have any zama'akiv the carbon, you already did all the four essential avodas. So when Rabbi Yehuda says that these psulim, if you place on the mezbech, you got to remove it because it's not as if you didn't make the carbon at all. We're talking about a psulim that took place before you zoydek the blood. But even so, not everything. For example, pigel. Pigel, we just said, what happens is you shechted it, you had in mind the wrong time. We said you left on mezbech, leave it there. So within. We'll see more later why punct these three, but three things that were possible on these, all things that happened before the zrika. What are the three things that are exceptions that we will remove them from his bear? One is if you shechter at night. That's a disqualification that if you did on his bear, we will take it off. Or nishpach dama, that the blood spilled out. So again, these are all things that happened before you did the zrika, right? It spilled out before you can't do the zrika. Nothing to do. Or the yatsa dama chutzer climb. Or you took the blood outside of the Beis Hamikdash. Also, in all these three instances, tated, you got to take it down. Rab Shimon disagrees. He says, light tated, even these three, you leave them on the Mizbech. And Rab Shimon, this is the rule. Any psul that took place literally inside the Beis Hamikdash, even though some of the other things that he's going to mention could have happened in the Beis Hamikdash, but it's very unlikely to happen. These things occurred after Beis Hamikdash, or another way of learning pshat is that these things are a result of bringing the Beis Hamikdash. In other words, these are psulim, not stam the Weltrein, these are psulim to do with the avodah. Something happened wrong with the avodah. So in other words, connected to the Kodesh. Then mikablik, the Mizbech will accept it. La haya psul b'kodesh, the psul did not either happen in the Beis Hamikdash, or it has nothing to do with the fact that it's a apostle avodah. It's another psul altogether. Ein hegdish mikablik, then Mizbech will not accept it. For example, what's an example of a psul that has nothing to do with Kodesh? So we had before, and actually explained, min hatzoim, min habakar, remember we learned from the fact, min, that's not all the cattle, not all the sheep, and of them. Some of them we exclude. So which ones? Bestiality was performed with this animal, or the animal performed bestiality, or hamuktzah, it was set aside, and either to be used as a carbon, or set aside to be an avodah zarah, different opinions of Rishonim, or haneved, you actually worship avodah zarah, and l'chayda muktzah neved can only have happened before even you were makdish the animal, because if you were makdish the animal, somebody else comes inside to serve it. Ain't adam oisha dover sheina shaloi. Revei and is a ma'aser. It comes also, but no ma'aser, just this. So yeah, so the Rishonim talk about that. The hamechir. But Esther you give it to her as a zaino, a mechir is swap it for a dog. Bahaklayim or for climb, because it says in the pasuk, min hakebes it has to be distinct. Bahatreifa and bahayitze daifen. It says yivolit, not if it came out through cesarean. Ubali mumin. Again, if the animal had a mum. All of these psulim, it's not because of the after it became a carbon, they become apostle. These are unrelated. It has a mum. But we learned before in the Gemara already that we quoted this mission. But Kiva Machtir Bal Mum. Kiva says that if it has a mum, he goes on his back. And then we decided to reduce that to a mum, which is a cataract in the eye. And why punct a cataract in the eye? Because ain tamus zachrus ba'ifus. Because in certain kabbanis, a cataract is not a problem. Missing a leg is a problem by an oif as well, everywhere. But shank in a cataract, or taste already want to know why we also had a cut in the lip. These things are kosher by a bird, so because it's kosher somewhere, as we'll see, remember we had most about bummers, it's kosher. Because it's kosher somewhere, Rabbi Kiva says you can use it on his bech. And the Chacham argues. Comes along, Rabbi Chanina is gan koinim, Rabbi Chanina is gan of the koinim, sort of in charge of the koinim. He says, my father, who must have been a kohen gadol, he would remove from the Mizbeach is Bali Mum Agam Mizbeach. In other words, we disagree with Rabbi Akiva. If it had a mum, even a cataract, we would remove it from the Mizbeach. Then the Mishnah another rule. Kishem she'im alu lo yerdu. If we were ready on Mizbeach, we don't want to remove it. Not because there's a mitzvah or anything else. We just want to remove it. Is kachim yordu, but once it came down, lo yalu. There's no mitzvah to put it back up. In fact, you shouldn't put it back up. It doesn't belong there. Number next thing. The kulon sha'olu chayim l'reish Mizbeach. If an animal wandered on the ramp, and we learned even before that the ramp has a sin in Mizbeach, wandered on the ramp alive, then yerdu. Don't say, oh, if it had that you have to leave it there and shecht because the mizbeach, because it says in the pasuk that anything that touches mizbeach yikdash, kol gave mizbeach yikdash. So even a living animal, no. Only we learn from oila only after the geshachten. Oila also chayil mizbeach. Now we say another thing. If an oila goes up alive on the head top of mizbeach, tated, you take it down. You don't have to shecht it. There's no kedusha. The mizbeach doesn't take control yet. Once you shecht it on top of mizbeach. Yafshit, you have to strip it and cut it up right there on the spot. Even though the machlekes gemaros we're talking about the next few days, if you can, if there's no tuach on top of the mizbech. Says the Gemara. Now the Gemara will explain the machlekes Rabbi Yehuda and so. Time you learned in the Braisa. Rabbi Yehuda says the pasuk the zois, which is a limitation of miut. It says zois, then it says he. Right, there's Torah zoila he. He is a miut. And ha'oila, the next ha'oila is the head. That's right. The first oila is not a meat because the first oila is telling you that should be the first carbon. But these three miyutim. Miyutim. So what are we excluding? Prat l'nishchet b'layli, shechted it at night, and the shenish b'dama, or the blood is spilled out, and ushiyat dama chutz l'klein. Geim also tated. These three, they went on the back, you take them down. Why punk these three? Okay, these all happened before before you did the zrika, but so does pickle happen before you did the zrika. So how come these three are the exception? The Gemara will explain. Rab Shimon says, Oila, it says in the pasuk, Oila, Engli, Ella, Oila, Ksheira. All I know is that a carbon Oila is kosher, Minayil Rabba. How do you know to include the three cases that Rabbi Yehuda disqualified? You got to take it off. How do I know to include them? The rabbi shenishchet b'layla geshachten at night. Shenish perdama, the blood spilled out. Sheyatadam knows you can't do zrika. Ushiyatadam chutz l'klein, you can't do zrika. V'halon, you left it overnight. V'hayoyte, took it out. V'hatamei, it was tamei. Shenishchet chutz l'zmanei, chutz l'mekoymei. All of these psulim. Ushikibla psulin. V'zarko is dame. Again, two ways of learning this. One partial person is doing both activities, or just one. Hanitoni lemata shanitna lemaila belongs in the bottom.
Say Yotzadama puts the coin, and then again later say Hayotze.
It's meat and there's a blood. Ule shanitna lemaila, ulemaila shanitna lemata, or let's say karbachatas, you're supposed to go above the red line and you've sprayed it below. Hanitoni mechuchanas and befnim. The chatzah the you brought into the mizbeach befnim shlas mechutz, and that's all possible. Nevertheless, Pesach the Chater or Lishman or Korban Pesach and Chater. We learned the first mission as well. If he did it like this, the only two kabbanas. If he didn't have the right carbon in mind, it disqualifies the whole carbon. Not like other kabbanas, it's still a carbon, just like you and your obligation. Minayin Tamalayim. It says Zois Torah. You know what Torah means? Torah means these are all the oilers have the same law. All the kabbanas have the same law. Riba Torah Achad b'chol oilim. Anything that goes, an oil over here means goes on the mizbeach. We're not teaching oil means carbon oil. We're saying oil is that goes on them. Anything that goes on the beach has the same din, and that is that just like when something is kosher, you put it on the beach, it has to stay there. Something is possible on the beach, leave it there. So I would have thought, let's expand it further. But let's include all these psulim that in the Mishnah it said these are exceptions, that they're on the bech, you remove them. Let's say you use the same rule. Anything goes up, stays up, remains up. So how come we said that the Reveya Nirba or the bestiality or muktzah set aside for carbon for Avodah Zarah, never the Eston and Mechir, the Klein, the Treif, how do you know all of these are also that you do remove them? That's where the meat comes. Zeis. So Zeis comes to exclude, and Titus comes to include. So we included all the psulim we mentioned first, and the Zeis comes to exclude all of these psulim that, as we'll soon explain, that have nothing to do with carbon. No, it didn't happen in the Beis Hamikdash or as a result of avodah. You did something wrong with the avodah. None of these have to do anything with the avodah itself. Why did you include these and exclude these? We have the word toidas which comes to expand, umiyat, and then we have the word zois that comes to limit. So we decided it makes more sense. I'm going to be marble of those that became possible inside the Beis Hamikdash, or as a result of becoming a carbon and something wrong with the avodah. And I am going to exclude all of those that the psul did not happen in Beis Hamikdash. Even though Trace already before asked, you could have a case of Reva nearby in the Beis Hamikdash, but the chance of that happening is quite unlikely. And what do you call it? And also, it's not to do with it's that Aveda of Reva and Nirba has nothing to do with the fact that it's a carbon. So it's unrelated to Kodesh. So that's why those and Shalei we exclude those. You got to take them down. No, what's Rabbi Yehuda? How does he know to exclude these three? But Rabbi Yehuda Ma'islam Hach. This is what he says in Svar. And it's like this: any psul where you find that was never mutter anywhere else, we're going to have to remove the mizbech. A psul that was mutter, like yaitze. In the times of the bombers, there was no iser of yaitze by the meat. So therefore, we're going to leave it on the mizbech. Tumah is hutra b'tzibur. So any disqualification that there are instances, exceptions when it's mutter. So we say, even though in this case it's not, it's possible, or in these times it's possible, you put on the mizbech, leave it there. There was a connection, somehow a minute connection to the mizbech. Mashayin a psul that was never ever mutter, then we put on the mizbech, you got to take it down. Yeah.
If one of these things, psul mizbech, was put onto somebody's private bomber, would you have to take it down?
So you get it what?
If a guy put onto his private bomber, b'shas heter abomis,
yeah,
one of these psulim, reveya, nirva, muktzah, whatever, would he have to take it down?
I don't know. I'm afraid, yeah.
The same didn't apply.
I'm afraid you would think so, because they have no shaykhs to the mizbech, the bomber was a place of mizbech.
But we just said that these things, if even during shas heter aboma, we're using that as a smach to say you can leave it on there.
Not reveya nirba. Yaitse. Heter bombers, there's no isa yaitse, there's no laws of mechitzas. So he explains. But this is very odd. The Gemara will pick up on it. So let's say an example. He'll go through some of the psulim why he said if you put him as bech, leave it there. If you left it overnight, white blood, right? A carbon shlam lechatchila is 2 days and 1 night. So not every time lon is possible. So therefore, we leave it in Mizbech. The most obvious question is by Shlomo, that's the mitzvah 2 days and a night, and by this carbon it's only 1 day and a night. So what are you bringing an example for Shlomo, a priest in Shlomo? So we'll see. First of all, if you're not on a lon bedam, if you left it over by dam kosher, shadilon kosher beimud. Because by fats we say if it stay overnight is kosher. I'm why taka and lon beimud and kosher why shadilon kosher bebasa. We see by carbon shlamim a basa if it stay overnight, nothing wrong because you can have 2 days and 1 night. Okay, so we know that. And more will ask on that in a minute. Yaitse, shahayaitse, kosher b'bam. Only yaitse is kosher by bam. And we're talking about yaitse of meat, not yaitse of blood. Remember, we just said in these 3 cases and examples, one of them was yaitse and yaitse of blood. And yaitse of blood, he said, is different. Because blood is an essential part of the carbon, and therefore, if yaitse, that disqualification means you have to take it down from the bech. Tomei, why Tomei as well? We say if leave it back, leave it already. Because hutter b'tzibur. So we see these are sometimes mutter. So therefore, even though in this case it's not, put them back, leave it there. Chutzlas mane, even though it was yeshechted and you had in mind chutzlas mane. Why is it in over there that if you place it back, you leave it there? Because what you did was effective. Because now if I eat it, even in the right time, I'll get kodesh. That means Yishchita did something. Therefore, it's a shaykh, it's a mizbeach. Okay, in a negative way, but that's also a relationship. Because what? It affected the pigul. Is connected to chutzl mane. She kiblu psulin. If a yisrael, for example, receives the blood and the zokah and sprinkles it, bahanach psuli the chazi la'avodas tzibur. That these are psulim that are like similar to avodas tzibur, and therefore we say that any avodas these are avodas because they're presence or prevalent, whatever it is, leave it there. The only ones that we accept is if we did it at night, If you initially, the three things you said here. If you shechter at night, because there's no precedent for that, or what do you call it? Or if a apostle makabel abuse or the blood, if the blood spilled out, so you can't do any zikr at all, or if it went outside chutzakline. These are the three that may miyutin. If the blood went outside, but if the meat went outside, because we have a precedent by Bama, it's all right. Okay, says the Gemara. And why Yaitse by Dam he makes puzzle, because he has to find what else before Zrika. The other one before Zrika is Shchita. What other psulim took place here before Zrika was either Shchita or Yaitse by Dam. He included a Nishpach Dama, so he can't do Zrika. So you have these two choices. The problem is that Shchita was effective, because now you'll get Karas if it's Chutz's money. So it was effective. So to leave the only other one is that the only other psul could be before Dam is Yaitse. But by meat, Yaitse by meat took place after the Zrika. And we have a precedent by Bama. But the Yaitse of the Dam, which took place before the Zrika, and I have a choice. Which one am I going to exclude? Yaitse of Dam or the Shchita that you had in mind, Pigel? I'm going to leave the Shchita and Pigel because it's effective, it's connected to the Mizbech in a negative way. By saying the Yaitse of Dam has no connection yet to the Mizbech because it didn't spray the blood. Says the Gemara, I don't understand what you just said. Why not? The Chidonin, are we going to done Dover Shaloi Behachsheb Dover Chshedes? You're learning Koshlamim for 2 days and a night. So therefore, if you left, if you put on lon, so it was overstated, its time period expired, and you put it in the meat on his back, leave it there. Can you learn for Shlamim? That's the mitzvah of Shlamim, and this is an Aveda. So Gemara says, you're right. Tana as a Torah. Really, where does he learn all the things that once you leave it, put it in his bag, leave it there from Torah Oila? But the Torah gave us 3 miyutim. I have to find 3 exceptions. So in logic, which 3 exceptions are the ones that are the least connected to the Mizbech? So is not the case of one of meat, because we find elsewhere by Shlamim. So let's find other things that Mamash have no shaykhs at all. The 3 cases that he gave. Like Shchita Balayla is never kosher. So that's what he really relies on. It says the following. We just said in the base of Mikdash. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, according to Rabbi Shimon, you put it on the Mizbech. So what's the problem here? It took place in the base of Mikdash. The problem is that you can shech chulin at night. The problem is that's a korban. So according to Rabbi Shimon, if you put it on the Mizbech, it's a postal korban. But if you place it on the Mizbech, leave it there. But according to Rabbi Yehuda, he said clearly, Nishchad Balayla, you take it off. We have a din that if you bring a korban outside, either you shech the korban outside the base of Mikdash, facing the base of Mikdash, or you malaya, you bring on the mizbeach outside the base of Mikdash, you shech it in the base of Mikdash, and then you take it out and you malaya, you got your chayiv koros. But we learn out Pesach HaMoed that has to be a korban that is suitable, that is raw to go to the base of Mikdash. This very animal that you're using, knows if you're using an animal that's not shaykh to being a korban, then you're not chayiv koros. When you chayiv koros, only that it could have been used in the base of Mikdash. So what you did was you shechted at night. So l'chayda, according to Rabbi Shimon, it's a connection to the mizbeach, because if you were to put it on the mizbeach right now, you leave it there. So if you shechted it, or if you went ahead and you malayu outside, it has a connection to the base of Mikdash, chayiv koros. But l'chayda, according to Rabbi Yehuda, not only if it's a apostle of korban shechted at night, but if you put a mizbeach, you have to remove it. In other words, it has no shaykhs to the base of Mikdash. If you now took this animal and took it outside and you were malay and you marked it, you burnt it on the back, you shouldn't be either. So you did it inside the base of English where you achieved nothing. The hell of a chutz, and then you took it outside to put it on the mizbeach to roast it. Chayiv. Why? It's not shaykh at all to the base of English or the mizbeach, because you take it off if you put it on. What happens if you would? We learn that later in the Gemara from Psukim. If you shechted it outside, so it's the apostle korban, right? Can be used in the korban, and then you were marking it outside. You put it on mizbeach, you're chayiv, even though it's not shaykh. So shchita inside the base of Mikdash at night is no worse than shechting it outside the base of Mikdash out of day or night. Because there has no shaykhis, and therefore we're comparing it to that. That's the svara. It shouldn't be any worse than shechting a carbon outside and bringing it on the mizbech. It's Moshev Rav Chiba Ravin. Come to Rav Chiba Ravin. I have a question. It says hashoichet oif b'fnim. Instead of doing malika, which is the right form of a shchita by a bird, you use the thumbnail and you go from the back. Instead, what you did was you did a shchita. That means that this bird now was possible. Umayle b'chutz, and then you took it outside. Potter, you are potter. But shachad you took this bird and lechatchili you shechted it outside. And then you brought it back. One for shechting and one for ma'ila. Now, using your logic, Rabbi Yechon, that doing it inside the base of Migdash is no worse than doing it outside the base of Migdash. So, why are you telling me if you did shechita inside the base of Migdash and then you took it outside the base to roast on the you're potted? If the din is that if you did shechita of the bird outside the base of Migdash and then you put it back, you're chayiv. So shouldn't you say the same logic? It shouldn't be any worse than if you did it outside. But you said if you shechted at night inside the base of Mikdash, there's no worse than if you shechted outside. No, the same sort of here. Name a loite b'chutz m'sheich in the ma'il b'chutz. Says the Gemara to Yufta. It's a good question. We had it a few times already. This is the second time we have it in this Masechta. Iboyis ema. Using kasha to Yufta is kasha means it's a shver, but I'm still maintaining my opinion. Yeah, and then we give me the boyis ema. That's very. So there's no tiyuf to that because you have a way out. Another answer is you're talking to me shchitas oif. The big difference between shechting at night, the psul of shechting at night, or inside the base of Midrash, or shechting a bird. When it comes to kabbanas, kachim, kalim, whatever it is, if you shecht the bird, you butcher it. It's nothing. There's no precedent that shchita is good for a bird or carbon. When it comes to shechting, let's say at night, by chulin, that's a good shchita. So shchita itself is all right. The problem is not the shchita. The problem is the kachim. So therefore, like this, when you shech the bird inside, what are you actually doing is miktul katle. You are killing it. In other words, there's no way you could ever shech the bird inside the base of Midrash. I don't care if it's kachim. I don't care if it's kachim. I don't care if it's chulin. Even a chulin bird. Because there's no place for a chulin bird inside the base of Midrash. Chulin ba'azara. So there's no, inside the base of Midrash, there's no place for shchita on a bird. So it's like you're killing it. There's nothing happened at all. That's why if you then go ahead and you be makiv outside, nothing happened at all. But if you shechted at night, the shchita itself is all right. But if you shech chulin at night, it would have been valid. So therefore, if you shecht it at night and then you're malay, you're outside, you're chayiv. Miktul katlei. Okay, then the Gemara starts a new Gemara here. We already touched on it yesterday, and we'll continue tomorrow.